Okay. Hello, everyone. Tonight's live stream. Just a second. Change this. The treasured soul found in the ruins of the mind is a suggestion of different realities changing, and sometimes in life we have like behind our eyes we're a certain character in a certain story, and sometimes that story cannot find harmony with the actual objective reality. That means our objective truths stand differently than our subjective truths, you know. And so what I mean by that is that when you look at an object, yes, you don't need evidence. You can see the object on the table. But the thoughts you have on the object, in some sense, how do you have evidence for it? You can't see it. It just seems to be something that is aware. You're aware of it, you know? And when you, in some sense, want to explore your awareness as a creature on a rock in the middle of nowhere, you know, it's not a bad idea, because a lot of people are not asking the right questions. And the wrong question can, in some sense, make your life void. Pretty much as a kid, I didn't think it was survival of the fittest per se. I thought it was survival of whoever pays attention to what is most valuable, you know? Because when it comes to decision making, your decisions are being filtered through an idea of self. Do you see, even as you're listening to my talk, whatever opinion you have is based on the idea of yourself. But I'm telling you, and this came to me as a surprise, but that the idea of self cannot exist without the idea of the other. Do you see? That means, in some sense, the world around you defines who you are, you know, as much as you define what the world is. And I find that when people ask what is the purpose of life, let me tell you what is the purpose of life. It's kind of like you, compared to all other creatures on this planet, have a sophistication of intelligence and after billions of years an evolutionary opportunity that in some sense one can say the meaning, the purpose of life is just live in the state you are, not in the state you are, but in the evolutionary state you are, you know. And so what I mean by that is that I began to see that everything I try to like when I try to think about life, that those thoughts seem to be in an invisible room. Okay? They seem to be an invisible room where I'm like, wow, so is this the world where I see some things that are based on my experiences valid, but to others have not? For example, imagine like your young cousin comes and asks you a question, right? And so you're like, his world has not, his eyes have not seen the world enough to have his story of life be able to integrate comfortably, you know, with the more complex systems of life. Because life, in honesty, it's like you're a simple being in what comes across as a complex world. And the way you're understanding that complexity is through a sort of inner presence. Okay, your awareness, your attention is the secret of your inner universe. You know, and also the secret of your outer. You know, you can't survive well if you don't pay attention well. You know, they got to tell kids. You know, you got to study for survival. You know, that's more of a direct inspiration rather than you got to study to get a job. You know. Because every time there's two kinds of motivation, guys. There's one way where there's a sort of physical motivation, and that physical motivation is just you're excited to do something in a physical universe. Okay, you have the opportunity to be here, so you're excited to do something. But in some sense, the inspiration of an inner universe has nothing to do with the external as much. It's pretty much you trying to contemplate your character and how you conceive yourself in a character, and eventually you'll come to a certain story of the world which you've accepted, which is this is the core skeleton of your knowledge. Okay, it's a certain belief you have which you've kind of accepted, put it in the drawer, but the belief is there. Okay, when you find your, and I call it like, I think I wrote about it in one of my writings as the every person's principal universal philosophy. And what that means is like, as I'm speaking to you right now, you know, some of you might be listening to me and being like, okay, this Mr. Within guy, okay, what's his angle? You know, what's his final angle? And you see that final angle is, to me, it's just, I witnessed something overwhelming and I looked at like humanity and I was like, wow, there are more worlds than one, and as long as like the world is becoming a more multidimensional place and we just hold firm into our certain dimensions, the problem with comfort zones is that you miss out on the exploration. I'll give you an example. Imagine like you could imagine two types of Christopher Columbus, you know, before he set out to go find the land, even before he did all the cool stuff or whatever, you know. And he imagine he's like a kid, right? He's a little kid in his house, and his mother's like, "You can't go out," you know. And that for a long time, that kid would just stay home. Imagine, right? I don't know if this is probably not biography, but like, I'm just saying, like, this kid was so inside one state, one room of existence, that it eventually wanted to see beyond. Okay, and what really makes you wake up in the day is the possibility of an exploration that could contribute to all. Fun, like that's like the coolest thing. You know, the coolest thing is not wearing some sort of fashion item. The coolest thing is to advance your civilization, and it'll be a kind of win-win situation. You know, that's the power of the helping hand compared to, you know, the hand of a brute. You know, one is like, I'll take, the other is like, I'll give. Okay, and when you go in the mindset of giving, first of all, your abundance issues kind of naturally clear, like they clear themselves. So pretty much all those human beings on this planet who are grateful, their psychology preserves itself in a way where it cannot create depression or stress because they are satisfied with what is here. And pretty much a lot of spirituality begins, and this is where spirituality can become dangerous because it becomes a sort of escapism into abstraction. It's as if you're trying to like just walk in the world of your mind rather than the actual world where we all have in common. Okay? So when I say the treasured soul found in the ruins of the mind, I pretty much mean like the human beings can attain a certain experience, and it's not like something unique. It's not like some enlightenment thing. I mean, like, I think some, you know what enlightenment is? It's like some person saying like, yo man, you know, that like, you know, the neighbor has like a satellite TV, you know, and all the kids, you know, in the area are like, yo man, yo. You know, this is in a country where like television is like censored or whatever, you know, so people use satellite to access other, you know, what do you call it, like other channels, right? So pretty much I was saying like the access to knowledge is a sort of enlightening feeling, okay? But when you wonder about knowledge, this is where I say like before anybody even considers mysticism or spirituality, or before you even dare say the concept of a soul, you gotta realize like how far has been your exploration of it. And fundamentally, I think like when I looked at traditional spirituality, I realized evolution is for the mind. The mind only evolves in its own consideration, right? But there are forces that are present that are not they don't have a personality. It's not like, you know, a certain man in hide, like a certain personality in hiding dictating the existence. You know, that personality is only accessible due to due to a person who has a personality. Do you know that means? It means like there's one interpretation of the world where we have society, civilization, history, all this complexity, and there's one way of looking at the world where it's just you say, okay, this is all energy being in a form. You know what I mean? It's like you see, like it's all atoms. You see, it's like it's the ability of the mind to take objective reality and subjectively, in some sense, shift that duplicate of objective reality. Okay, so what I'm saying is pretty much the approach should be to study your mind. And when you go study it, you get this profound thing that so what if you find out the mind is inside the brain or not? Okay? Either way, the intelligence during the temporal life is where the utility is. How much you can use it, right? And to use it is in some sense, you got to abide. How can I say it? It's like you find a harmony between your inner universe and your outer universe, your inner reality and outer reality, and you recognize that they're both the same moment. The moment you do this, you begin to kind of watch the movement of the mind. And you begin to see how like you are kind of like you see your thoughts, but you're not your thoughts. You know what I mean? Like right now, if I think of like, if I try to like imagine like an apple floating in the air in front of me right now, okay, like I can. Right now I'm doing that. But where the apple is located is not physical. It is a sort of it's significance given to objective reality that gives it a position. So in some sense, our humanity, as it is becoming more intelligently self-aware, it is in some sense breaking the shackles of an animal, and in some sense realizing that the power of the mind is the more awareness it attains, the greater the existence can be experienced. Let me tell you, it's all a game of attention. That's all life is. People are just, these creatures are paying attention to different things. They're telling they're making a story out of all these things they're paying attention to in their experiences, and then they're communicating. And at the end of it, every being is just like a present moment of attention. Okay? So for me, the lack of study of attention, like you're not a student of life unless you have questioned what this is here. Okay? And this inspiration, it was very, like, I could totally understand why there were more philosophers back in the day than now, you know? Because everybody was a philosopher in the sense that they opened their eyes, they're awake in a world that's like just happening in the way it is, and they're like, what is this? That's the power of identity. That is, when a person can ask, who am I, authentically, sincerely, and truly, okay, when you wonder about what's that intelligence within your eyes gazing out into this existence, you have done the peak of evolution. You have done what no being could, okay? No lesser being could. Because it is the height of self-awareness when self and awareness are inseparable. It's as if you realize like your body exists alongside every value given to it. And the thing with knowledge is Socrates understood this. Socrates had this, he said the only true knowledge, something like that, the only true knowledge is to know that you know nothing. And why he said that is that because the more you dive deep to intellectualize this vast existence, you begin to realize that more of knowledge is hovering in emptiness. You begin to see the emptiness of words, and you begin to see what is giving them meaning is some profound image creating thing. Like, how can I tell you? It's as if like our main intelligence is based on image. Okay, images dictate our life. All these people posting on Instagram, you know, they truly know what I'm saying when I say images dictate your life, is because we feel we have to show something, you know? And the reason for that is because we're like, you know, in some sense, we're all on some battlefield where like some intense situation has occurred where we have awakened to a world of suffering as creatures. Okay, we have like when you look at a cat, the cat is not thinking, "My God, what am I going to do in 10 years?" You know, it's not thinking like that. You know, but the human being does, because the human being wants to fully grasp the opportunity. But to truly grasp the opportunity, at first your hand is going to be made of your ego. You're going to want a better story, so you're going to fight. You know, that's when like that really inhibits true friendship. You know, when people, you know, I doubt there there is any sort like friendship. You know, true friendship occurs through like your friend being able to accept your chaos and your order. Okay, and people only friendship is only based on order for now in modern society. You know, it's as if people ban the chaotic rather than to be inspired from it. Let me tell you what chaos is. Chaos is like in a world where everybody sees green, you know, somebody sees blue and he's like, yo man, there's more than green. And all those people who see green are like, we can't choose to see blue, you know, because we're all green, you know. And you begin to see how much language is the ruler of the minds of men when they try to survive. Language is the main entity. And you transcend the language threshold when you ask questions that no one else can ask from you. Because nobody has your eyes. Do you understand how important you can be as a contribution to civilization if you live your honest life? You know? It's as if you won't just be a statistic. You'd be a statistic that changed mathematical language. You know what I mean? It's like I see a lot of atheists, you know, looking at theists and pretty much feeling happy, excited. Their egos pick up Thor's hammer and they begin smashing like, you know, old belief systems, you know, and they feel like they're liberators. That's fine. They can totally do that, you know, free world. Like seriously, this world is just here, you know. It's like sometimes I've said the world, the physical reality is like free organized imagination. So think of it this way. You were one moment of being, then you divided yourself into two dimensions, one subjective, one objective. And the reason you did this is because you could have infinite reality. Because the moment the concept of a two occurs in a universe that didn't have that concept before, characters can be made. That means it's like one is the king. Like if numbers could be attributed personalities, I would say 0 is like the personality of the universe or God. 1 is the personality of like the king. Okay. 2 is the personality of the ego. Do you see? And 3 is all those people who it's like there's a king, like the number 1 is a king. Okay. Like guys, just listen to me. I'm trying to, how can I say it? Mix realities. But pretty much what I'm saying to you is that 0, 1, 2 is a relationship of space with form and then with the infinite extension of form. Okay? In ancient Vedic practices, there's a concept of Purusha and Prakriti. You know, what that means is matter and consciousness coexist. They're mutually dependent. They're two sides of the same coin. Where there's matter, there requires to be consciousness, and when there's consciousness, there requires to be something. You know? And so once you realize this, you begin to see that you don't, we generate stories over our findings. And then we make labyrinths out of truth that occupy the whole lifetime. You know? Creativity requires space and thus requires freedom. When you realize your creative intelligence, you realize you're orienting yourself based on your sense of space and based on how you've ascribed language, you know, to objects. And when you realize all the stuff in your room where you think there's stuff, that's a bottle, this is a computer, that's like a, you know, cup of coffee, you know, like these different words I use, once you realize they're momentary generation, you become very playful and you begin to realize your whole life has been based, your whole knowledge has been based on movement and noise. And if you just tune into the stillness and silence for a little bit, just be still and silent through the day, you begin to see something very unique. And the poet, a Sufi mystic poet, the Persian poet named Rumi, you know, he said, in some sense, let the waters settle and you shall see the truth. You shall see the moon and stars mirrored in your being, something like that. And he's suggesting that if you just be still and silent, your mind settles itself like the ripples of a pond, vanishing slowly. And then you come to this like profound realization, you're in attention in a moment, and that's where free will begins. Do you see? So all those people in the New Age community who are on some mission to destroy the ego will realize that's the sort of biggest ego. You know, sometimes I say the ego's last refuge is wisdom. But it's that the good thing is that's its last refuge. Do you see? When it observes itself, it dares to see beyond itself. And when your attention goes on different points in your life, and let me tell you something unique. You know what concentration is? Just looking at one thing. If you just look at one thing, you'll just look, for example, like right now I'm looking at a cup, okay? As I'm looking at this cup, it's as if like from this river of thoughts, certain thoughts are hitting this cup and I'm getting different ideas on it, okay? So wherever your attention go, and Alan Watts very playfully says like, he says whatever you look at for too long becomes strange for you, something like that. And it's and that's true, but it's not that it becomes strange. It's because the same idea is just oscillating to a point where you've seen it and you see beyond it. Okay, so you update your own knowledge. All our computers and phones update themselves. You know, when they connect to the internet. So think of it this way: that you gotta, in some sense, connect to an honest view of the world, and for a moment, don't impose anything upon it and just look at it. And you'll suddenly see, oh my God, all the stories I've been telling in my life or all my beliefs, you know, they come down to what I look at next. Do you believe this? Do you believe this? That I was thinking, okay, let's entertain the concept of a heaven and hell. Okay, does the person go to heaven and hell based on their last moment on this life or what they did, or based on their whole life, or based on certain moments? Could they have lived a bad life and then done certain good moments and then be liberated? And you begin to see it's like a game of trying to show yourself the thumbs up in the mirror to justify truth only based on your subjective reality. You see? And it's this fascinating situation, and I've considered that we should approach, in order, like society is becoming a complicated place. Our civilization is pretty much like a vast amount of different beings who are living who have different views on the world. And when they all want freedom, when they all want the same thing, pretty much there occurs a collision of people's inner worlds with one another. You know, and it occurs through their speech, through their competition, through their survival, through any mannerism. But the problem is that our society wants to take, in some sense, is worshiping Occam's razor. You know, and is in some sense wondering, like, doesn't want to create extra dimensions, you know, when you are already in one dimension. But I say that we got to create different dimensions, and then those dimensions become things where in some sense we're not changing the world, but we're creating a dimension where we're at least trying to build the blueprint of a better world. Do you see? So we add dimensions to moments where in some sense chaos, the design of the chaos and order of that moment is like not describable, right? Because I've had moments where I've done things in this life You know, for example, gotten angry at a family member for no reason, or like, you know, in some sense, try to, in some sense, justify my ego in some way through different life experiences, especially when I was younger, you know. When I was younger, it was like I believed in my own thoughts to such a degree where you could say it was a sort of, I think every person is like this pretty much, it's like, it's ideal worship. You know, back in the day, people worship idols, and there were men, like, you know, who came and broke the idols of man's worship. But now, you know, like for me, it's one of those situations where I'm like, oh my God, the whole planet is worshiping their own ideas. That's pretty much it. Everybody's worshiping their truth, and they're trying to just find a certain behavioral justification for it, and that's society. And I was like, wow, is this the game we really want to play as a species? Or do we want to transcend thought by realizing that we can instantaneously end the war, all war, by shifting language? You know, you can say language is the cause of all wars, because if these beings couldn't speak to one another, their differences wouldn't be cause mass the decisions of leaders of nations to, in some sense, do something like that. You know, and in some sense, you can say like the barbarism found in, like, for example, the animal kingdom. You know, like, in some sense, how can I say it? Language is the skeleton of your mind. Any sort of thinking is through language. And when you study language and you understand the importance of it, you understand the importance of how you're filling up meaning, and how life is not per se something you gotta find truth in. You create it. You create it, for you're already it. You see, it's like it's a moment happening. There's your whole moment. You're not just unique patterns. You're not just like an aspect of your moment. Right now, as I'm speaking to you, you're not just this body, you know. And I'm not saying you're some like soul in the, like, you know, like Casper movie kind of thing. I'm saying you, in this current moment, can see your body and realize your body, but this body provides you a spherically endless awareness. And Mr. Within is saying, you're that whole awareness. Okay? And the crucial thing about going within is, in some sense, being able to observe language. You know, that's a great skill to have, because if you don't observe language, you'll react to language. You'll pretty much allow, like, an animalistic habit in your existence to carry on into states where that animalistic habit does not necessarily need to be in. You know? That means, believe it or not, this life, the most ultimate wisdom is to abide by your moment. Okay? But to truly be able to see your moment through self-inquiry, discover your true nature. You know? This is very crucial. When I say the treasured soul found in the ruins of the mind, for me, my mind was a story that suddenly became like a ruin. I saw the emptiness in the ideas I was living for. I understood the emptiness in my knowledge. It was an overwhelming moment where I could not lie to the universe that I didn't know, in some sense, what's going on. And in some sense, when I came to that moment where I stared at the inevitable and kind of were like, okay, you know, it was in that moment, it was in that moment where the structure of nature stopped being too solid for me. As if the moment my behavior shift through a behavior and through a vision that had changed myself, you know, to myself, it was as if in that moment I felt that I know nothing about destiny. But we all sit there trying to think what the future would be like. And it's a fascinating situation where we are creatures that use time in a world that we can't even see. If I ask you, like, why do people wear a watch? Because they have to, in some sense, evoke in their abstraction, in the subtler planes of their mind, in their subjective realm, again, the time, the concept, the symbolic meaning of the movement of the hands of the watch. In 2013, I found myself very drawn to Tibetan Buddhism. And I found myself drawn to Tibetan Buddhism because after a very profound experience and a dream, I had a dream where it was a sort of like enlightenment in my dream for me. It was an experience that changed the totality of all because it allowed the previous point of reference to no longer filter or reduce the future. You see, the fate of our species is in how much we allowed the universe to express its greatness. And those people who are violent and they're blindly violent because they only want to live in their imagination, because they don't understand that people have a value to themselves that's unspeakable and the highest value, you know. And in some sense, we must not disturb the members of our species, but we must, in some sense, inspire. We must inspire a collective initiative to, in some sense, realize that the solution to the next like social and cultural challenges that we're going to find in the 100 years, let me tell you what's going to happen. You know, this project is going to begin that the whole species is going to want to contribute to. And this project is a kind of recognition. I call it the Tower of Internationalism. The Tower of Internationalism is actually so I pretty much, the way I explain it is that if you don't know the story of the Tower of Babel, Babel, you know, the story is that the humanity, a unified humanity, sought to together build the highest tower that reached the heavens and it could go to the gods. So all human beings can, in some sense, attain the state of the gods, you know, the state of awareness of the gods. And so in that moment, right, as they climb and this humanity is so focused, you know, and they're building in some sense their path to an Elysium. The gods see man trying to look through the eyes of God. And pretty much they see these, like one of the gods looks at the tower and it's like, oh my god, these guys are actually climbing up, we gotta do something. And what the gods do is that they make a unified humanity speak separate languages so they could no longer build the tower together. And through a sort of divide and conquer strategy, you know, mankind was in some sense denied its potential greatness. So right now, I'm saying the way in 2019 I find society and culture and all this to be is like the Tower of Babel situation, where right now, we've kind of got into it from a different angle. Okay, so right now we have different nations, different cultures, societies, different ideologies running things, you know. And so, what I'm trying to say is that we just have to realize we have to find a common language. And this common language is not like our different languages of different nations. I believe that common language is actually geometry. Okay? And what I mean by that is that okay, I'll leave that for another talk. Okay? But I've said before in other talks, geometry is the next language of all languages. You know, it's the next great language of all languages. And but that's for another talk. I don't want to go there now. You know, but I'm going to tell you this: we have to rebuild civilization. We have to through an added collective community, global community. So I'm saying, think of it this way: we see in superhero movies, okay? We see, like, you know, what is it, like the Justice League, or beings with different abilities, okay, with special abilities, all coming into one unit, you know, becoming one unit, and then fighting greater challenges. Okay, so now I look at civilization and I see a series of problems. If you kind of look at your life, you know, and if it's one of where you're really seeing survival, it's pretty much there's series of problems, you know, and you're just trying to solve them and you're trying to get through. It's kind of like you're tunneling through different realities every day, and some of them could be very repetitive, you know, and some of them could not be, you know, and some of them could be chaotic, and some of them could be ordered. And regardless of the design, like, life approaches you in many ways, and it also approaches your mind in many ways. What that means, that I just not like people don't only walk up to you, ideas walk up to you too. And when I say ideas walk up to you, I'm not suggesting entities beyond the veil. I'm suggesting that you suggest, you, it's like you I don't want to say dictate, but you know your need. And when you are honest, you know, it's like it's very easy to notice when, you know, other, like, when, like, it's easy to lie to others, and, you know, but it's, how can I say, I don't want to say it's easy. I'm saying it's easy because it's like done, okay. You know, pretty much I realize all kids in the world, when you ask them, you know, something, a lot of them lie. And so what I mean by that is that it's as if, like, they're willing to put forth a subjective truth over an objective truth. But when we want to look at the objective truth, advance the objective truth, and evolve it, then we have to, in some sense, realize we require a greater subjective force. And so instead of a Justice League kind of thing where people with, like, you know, like super strength and super bank accounts, you know, you know, it's like it's not a Batman Superman kind of situation. It's one where I'm saying the greatest minds from all society, if they feel they are worth it, if they feel they are worthy, must have a place to go to, you know. And I've conceptualized this in many ways. I've given it a name. I called it once the School of Advanced Communication, where we're studying the communication and like how existence is a moment in advanced ways. Okay? In some sense, I called it School of Advanced Communication. Sometimes, like, I also called it School of Athens 2.0. Okay? And in School of Athens 2.0, I suggested that, imagine there was a global community of the greatest philosophical visionaries all over the planet, and the greatest visionaries in general from all fields. Pretty much, I'm saying that before we can, as a civilization, like as a species, find the solution, we got to create an environment where the solution can even happen. Okay, and that requires a sort of framework. So we are right now, just like our ancestors, like the pioneers of the future. Okay, you know, and like, I always doubted, you know, I always felt that, you know, I got close to writing that on a resume. You know, as a soft skill. But I'm trying to say, find your true nature and then abide by it, and then your intelligence updates, and then you attain a universal perspective. You start taking responsibility as a universal being. And when you take responsibility as a universal being, you're doing it in the coolest way possible. Because you are saying there is a species distracted here, and everybody's distracted, and it's fine. It's fine. That's how it is. But, you know, the effort, like, how can I say it? To do something no one else is doing is the first step of genius. I think it was Albert Einstein where he said something like genius is when two worlds can find, like you create a bridge between two worlds. Okay? And I find that we have to create a bridge with all worlds, or our civilization is going to so mess up the surface of the earth that in like the year 2000, from 100 on, we might have to go live in sky cities around our atmosphere. And for many hundreds of years, kids would kind of be like born in these sky cities, and they would look outside from the edges and look at an earth that's no longer habitable, you know? And then in the history books, they would read of kids who would run outside, you know? On the surface of the earth. And I'm saying like I'm being kind of creative with that, but in some sense I'm saying the responsibility is the same. We must, to preserve the world, we must at some point, at least a certain percentage of our life, fight for the truth. Okay, and the truth is not our truth, and it's not per se others' truth. The truth is the potential, the the greater efficient integrative potential that can arise. It has nothing to do with what people believe. It is what will like how can I say it? It is yet to come, and that's why you don't need to believe anything, you know? Because the moment you see like this enlightenment thing, like I'll tell you, like there was a man named Swami Krishnananda, this yogi, very profound yogi, and some people looked at him and felt like he was a microphone of God, you know, in Indian culture. But I'm saying like him, he has this quote. It's not I don't know. It's not a quote. It's something he wrote in his book where meditation stops once you see the inseparability of the individual activity and the cosmic activity. And in some sense, your mind suddenly breaks the chains of the past by realizing the past exists because of a separation of worlds. And the separation of worlds exists because we require that technology and the world of language to speak to others. You see, when two people speak to one another and have a conversation, it's so fascinating because they're both trying to create. It's like in the same room, both of their worlds are in some sense performing. So like I find that it's based on a value system, believe it or not, and a value system is based on your novel experience. That's why nobody can tell you what to do, because your newest experience, in some sense, rejustifies you. There's a book by Paulo Coelho called The Alchemist, and pretty much like I really liked the book. Like when I read it, it was one of those books where I was like, okay, you're all right, you're a good book, But it was one of those things where I found it like it was such a profound metaphysical metaphor, for wisdom, the conclusion of the book. But it's pretty much about a kid who goes on this journey and who is not looking for something, but eventually finds it back home. Okay? And this is kind of like the whole circular notion of enlightenment in Zen. That it's not like when you get enlightened, it's not like you have like just fancy ideology. The reason my ideology exists, it's out of a sense of, behind my eyes, I see a universe where I want to, in some sense, live for, and just live for a little bit. It's not like you can't really change the world because the world's already changing. How do you change a changing thing? It's like whatever you do, it just happens. The result is there, you know. To change a changing world is like never waking up from a dream, you know. And for me, I realize there's going to come a moment where my mind will transition just like my body will. That means when I give these talks and these thoughts, like you guys might not believe it, but like I've recorded a lot of talks, like none of it, like, very, you know, a certain percentage of them have been uploaded, right? But I could tell you, I have also lost a lot of talks, okay? And I'm only sharing this out of just I want to tell you something I saw, I lost a lot of talks, and I remember first of all the first talk I lost, and I felt it was like an incredible talk. You know, it was like maybe like this the 14th talk I gave, and then like the file somehow like what got corrupted. You know, and I felt like back then I was a bit like my superstition was like I like for me superstition is just playful. Okay, my imagination is playful. My subjective reality does not dictate per se all my truth, but it does in some sense give a story to look through life. You know, but in some sense, when that moment of loss came, I realized that the loss has occurred. The chaos has come and left, and you're just standing there. Okay, and when that moment comes, I realize what I can do is just I'll be just my. It's like inevitably you'll just be who you have always been, and you'll just gaze at what you've seen. Okay, and it like what can I tell you? It's like you don't like you let go of the memory too. You know, for me, I can access like a lot of my memories, but at the same time, I don't hold on to memories. I don't hold on. I don't walk through the day with a belief system. I watch the day occur as if the world is performing in front of my eyes, you know? And it's as if I walk with a sort of admiration. And let me tell you, thoughts pretty much occupy your attention. And what I mean by that is like, you know why in a lot of mystical traditions they say desire? They say like you gotta get rid of desire. The reason they say this is because you have such an ability to see your whole moment, but you are just choosing to have a subjective loop. Okay, occupy your attention, and it's as if you're a person who's walking in an art gallery, but you've only chosen to look at the pamphlet and not the artwork on the walls. And somebody's coming and tell you, bro, get rid of the pamphlet. You got to let go of the pamphlet, you know, to see the artwork on the wall on that art gallery you're walking through, you know. Thoughts arise naturally. That is the secret of knowledge. When you realize nature's at work, you know, you at first have this mindset of, you know, like the generals would say to before you can serve, you must serve before you command. That means you must experience the whole system before you can lead it. Okay? And in some sense, we, how can I tell you this? It's like you stop fighting with nature and then you watch it honestly for what it is. And then you trust your next response and your journey just advances. Okay? It's like pretty much a kind of surfer on a surfboard, like trying to balance every moment kind of thing. That's what life is in some sense. Yeah, guys, I'm just reading a comment from Mohana saying with greatness, you have to let go of preconceived thought to see greatness in ordinary people. Yeah, yeah, well said. But for me, there's two types of greatness too, right? There's a greatness that's not manifest, it's potential, and there's a greatness that is occurring. Okay? And for me, I feel like society, culture is so occupied for with its own game. It's as if like in a changing world, people don't want to change. That's the issue. That's the tension of the species. In a changing world, so many people don't want to change because they have not understood the value of novelty. Vengeance, violence, these are creatures still responding to their past. As if something happened in the past, they're still not content and they're reacting. You know? A lot of the species is just reactions to their past. People are just reacting like to their past and just occurring as beings. Okay? But seldom are there people, and there's few, okay? Like it's like there's some, like there was a moment where I was walking, you know, in downtown Toronto, And I was just looking, and I was like just fascinated, acknowledging how I was having like a watching this projection of a thought that I was thinking that how fascinating that every human being out on the street at work has thoughts and has numerous thoughts they're going through. And if your brainwaves could somehow in the future through some technology have a geometrical projection on a screen, you know what I mean? Like on some screen, we could see like how your thoughts were given off a sort of geometrical shape. You know, you'd see people are having so many. Their attention is all over the place, both within and without. And for me, I was just walking there and I'm like, how silly am I that I don't have any much thought aside from this thought? And you don't understand how much of my life has just become a silent walk. Because it's as if I notice I don't want to live thinking I'm a thought. Because that's a loop. That's a metaphysical loop. You know, there was a time I went to Rishikesh, India, you know, through what I could consider synchronistic events. And I went and lived in an ashram, and I went to this yoga program, okay, like a actual physical yoga program, you know. So, and when I went to India, I went there empty-handed philosophically. I went there kind of considering I want to start as if like with my newborn eyes. You know, when I was a newborn child, like how was I looking at the world prior to being indoctrinated in language? It was just a moment. When you can get comfortable with that moment, you're pretty much, you live a very, your life just flows very comfortably, you know? When you can realize now the moment like who you were before you learned language, before you gave a subjective abstract shape to sound. That silence is kind of the truth because you realize all words have arisen from silence. There is a sort of silence that is deeper within who you think you are, that is just the space that's allowing it. So pretty much what that means is you become you have the master's eyes in the student, okay? As if you're a student of life and you feel like you're this person going through life, and then suddenly in a moment you realize, regardless of subjective significance, like you can get certain realizations that extract your attention out of sensory, uh, out of the firm beliefs driven from sensory perception. You stop resisting design and you become a being who can't judge anybody because you realize your judgment exists only in your own eyes. You realize the values you give, it's all a play. You gotta just be playful in this creation because if you want to go super serious at it, it's going to make you want to attain a sort of perfection of a solution, and that perfection of a solution will make you feel most of your life you're incomplete, and in that incompletion you'll eventually like it's as if why live a life with a blindfold? Why live a lifetime with the blindfold of a certain ideology that was just the first wave of information that hit you as a child? You know, a lot of people are reacting to their childhood, you know. This is insane, but it is insane in a way where normality was never normal in a changing world. What is normal is honestly what a group of people is accepting should be the main thing. That's it. It's very fascinating when you realize that your world is not just emptier than you think; it is emptier than thought. But in that emptiness, there is a sight. There is the presence of sight, which is instantaneously just an unknown divine happening. Do you see? It's unknown. Its divinity comes from its awestruck response to the unknown movement of the universe. Do you see? That means after you've learned everything in knowledge, you will learn from the unknown. You know, Imagine we created a robot that read everything, every book, got all the knowledge, of the species. Okay, with some advanced AI, right? Then we asked it, okay, what next? What, like, you've learned all, like, you've studied all of knowledge. What are you going to study next? And then the AI or whatever. I'm just saying, like, playfully, that perspective will just say the unknown is left. And when you realize, regardless of how smart or not smart or whatever way you refer yourself in your spectrum, every human being, all your ancestors, and even all your future, lineage, are all staring at the unknown. And that's what gave me a will to kind of share my inner reality with the outer world, because it was on lockdown since childhood. I was a shy kid, an extremely shy, silent kid. It's as if, like, I wouldn't communicate much unless like there was enough of sense of freedom to do so. Okay. And that's not just a sort of effect from byproduct of the greater governance of the system, of the environment, but it's very important to be aware that of your mind. And when I went to India, and when I went to that ashram, there was a person I saw who was like, many different people came and they were like acting super enlightened and spiritual, okay? But there was only one of them who was at peace. Like, the guy was, like, there was happiness occurring in his life, not just happiness being conceptualized and wanting to happen, It's as if the being had a sort of contentment with how the moment was occurring, and therefore was experiencing a higher quality of life, Because in society, I am an honest fool. People are going to look at me and say, look at this guy, what is he doing? Oh, man. But for me, the temporalness of reality commands an eternal exploration. When I was back in Canada, I called this guy, his name was Wimal, and I asked him a question which I hadn't asked in India, I hadn't felt like this question I should ask. I felt like if it was something, it would just approach. Okay, but I asked him, what was your most ultimate experience of what you consider to be truth in this existence as a conscious being? And he told me that he had a moment, some time ago, where he sat beside a river. And as he sat beside the river, he realized he was not his emotions. He realized he was not its thoughts. And he even realized nature wasn't even like this truth. And the truth was a sort of presence, to be present. To be present. Imagine, like, you visited, like, your parents, which you haven't seen in a while. You want to be present there. You want to be you want to be like that statement just speaks on its own, Okay, where was I? Pretty much, guys, what I'm trying to share with you in these stories is that to realize that you're not just your emotions, you're not just your thoughts, and you're not just the objects of observance and the observer within. You will come to a moment where there is nothing to do about. It is so, the truth is so instantaneously just being there, that in some sense there is nothing to say to just moving phenomena in a cosmos, you know. And for me, that is why I say playfulness is the ultimate resolution. You know, this is why I say the way, another way to stop war, you know, is for world leaders to just hire, like the UN, to hire like a very advanced gaming company to go and try to create in a kind of like a strategy, you know, game like the old school game Generals, you know. And so the heads of countries, instead of going to war, they play like their militaries play in a digital realm. They go at war in a digital realm. We take the chaos externally, and rather than responding to it again chaotically and externally, we handle the chaos internally and eventually let it go and come to the present moment and live on. That's it. Okay? For me, I wake up every day, I get sculpted by different things that happen to the day, and I have a certain emotional, like, you know, kind of built up of momentum that happens, and I just watch my thoughts and emotions occur. And I'm no longer defined by them. I rather defined by my experience. You right now listening to me, there's a part of you that is experiencing something. And if you are to find truth, that means your experience has to be true too. You know, how can you find truth if you can't, if you don't grant the immediate position to your eyes, you know, to be able to see it? Do you see? Remember, it's always easier to break something than build it. It's always easier to lose something than find it, you know? And so we are speaking about the state of mind here in these talks. You know, when I'm speaking to you, I see it this way. Uh, Me and you are hired by the same species to advance the civilization. Do you know what I mean? Like we all share a similar structure. We all have a sort of sophisticated self-awareness. We have to cultivate our inner realities, and you must allow your subjective realm to be playfully and creatively handled. You know, and your objective realm, I mean, seriously be able to survive as well. You know, play the games that our ancestors, in some sense, created. We have to. You know. You know, I never questioned whether I liked chess or not. You know, just like my father wanted to play. You know, and he introduced me to the game, and he taught me the game, and I, you know, honestly, I'm very thankful because he taught me a sort of strategic method to success. Okay, but at the same time, chess is all about controlling the center, and you know, in some sense, when you look at your ideology, you as a human being, I can say personally that you have, your mind is so advanced, you don't realize how many ideas, different ideas you've thought about through your whole life till this current moment. You are literally, it's like this non-stop engine the moment you're awake of just contemplation or just trying to figure things out. You know, even like an animal, the caveman, going to, like, getting hungry and going to eat food, that was like evolutionary. That was like something causing this creature to move rather than just to stay there. You know, as if its first inspiration was to handle the objective realm. And once it mastered handling the objective realm, that inspiration became into handling the subjective realm. It's as if, like, this is what I'm saying. This is a concept I'm honestly kind of very excited to speak about always, because it's a concept I developed called the pilots of consciousness. And what that means is it's not some like image per se. What I'm saying is you are a sort of consciousness existing, and you can pilot this. Free will is like, you don't have free will in everything. Like, you can't change the shape of your face. You know what I mean? Just by looking in the mirror and being like, okay, I want it to change. You know, it doesn't happen that way. You see, it's as if like a vast amount of existence is given and is happening on its own, and you have a certain control of changing it. You know, of course, your inner reality is, in some sense, very playfully just under your own rule. You feel like your imagination is your own private room that nobody can touch. You know, and in some case that is true, it is. But then you gotta be also study the subjective reality too. You know, and how you study it is realizing at first all your ideas exist codependent with objective reality. The way I speak about the subjective realm and the objective realm, I say there are two eyes that see the same moment, or two eyes that are being the same moment, or two hemispheres of the brain being the same moment. Do you see? That means two sorts of self, where one is observing the other through a different polarity. You know, In the ancient Vedic tradition, there's a story of the two birds, and the two birds is that on this branch, there's a branch like on this tree, there's a branch where there's this bird that's just running around from the moment it wakes up. It's bewildered to survive, and it tries to find. It's finding a nest, like it's building a nest, and its children. It's not building a nest. It's trying to get food for children and all this stuff. It's just busy. It's a bird that's just busy working. And above this branch, there's the same bird, which is just doing nothing and still watching. And these were attributes to your intelligence, that a part of you is always watching yourself in the world. That's what we call wakefulness. Okay? But you attribute this as a watcher in society. So when I'm around people, like my actual name is Amin. Okay, and my alias online is like my name in the digital realm is Mr. Within. You know, but these are terms. These are terms. So the sophistication, it's as if like my ego is not used. Your ego is like a sword. Okay, you sheathe it like you don't wield it until the moment is required. And the moment usually occurs for the ego in social situations, and not just social situations, you going into a more vulnerable system. You know, not a more vulnerable system where you are more vulnerable in that system. Okay? And so just what did knights do back in the day? Like they had a shield and a sword, you know? The samurai had two kinds of swords, you know? You know, when there were too many people, you know, you gotta use two hands, you know? Your mind teaches you by updating itself as it is. And I'll tell you, start in a simple way where you don't think of wanting to have a certain spiritual practice or like, what is that? You know, certain method, you know, sort of tell me something, Mr. Within, so I could, like, you know, find something. Like, no, that's not the approach, you know? Guys, we got another comment. Moana, love your solution for war. What the world needs now is more playfulness. Yeah. Yeah, honestly, like I was even saying that like they should have a day where world leaders all dress in their pajamas, unique to their culture, and they all like have like a meeting like that. You activate two aspects of yourself, and the most immediate thing you do is you learn to watch life, and not to just watch life in a way where you're convinced. Like your personality can distract you from your direct experience by just keeping your direct experience certain through certain ways of looking at the world. First of all, that you have so much freedom in this existence that nobody can tell you what to believe. Nobody can tell you what to look at. You choose. You're a living entity. You choose. Okay, you choose the realms you feel you're entitled to. Okay, and that means like the realities that the world's like what you see in this world and is real to you. Okay, that means some thoughts are real. You know, like the atheist very easily can reject the thought of God, but cannot very easily reject the thought of self. Can't reject the concept that how is consciousness just an attention that's here. You know, not just how it's here, just how do certain why can't we still create like consciousness digitally and not digitally mechanically? You know, why can't we create a robot that has the same consciousness as a human being? There are elements to how our minds are present, how our intelligence is present, that is unknown. And thank God some scientific academic department acknowledges this. I'm just happy for that. I'm so happy that the unknown still lives on in a world that's just feels it knows it all, you know? All right, guys. You find the treasures of your soul when you, in some sense, let go of the past. And that's what you find in the ruins. You realize the ultimate is change. Everybody's going to change. Gandhi was so like, you could say Gandhi was so badass that such a badass on such a badass mystical level that what he said every day I woke up, I'm a new being. It's like a new life. So imagine every day you woke up and it was a new life. You'd approach it in a new way. You wouldn't just have the same tendencies and same solutions. So pretty much live a day where you experience something that is new. Make divinity novelty, because that's what it was. That's why they called it revelation. It was something so new and mind-blowing that people around the world were like, oh my God, God is here, And it was like, it was something like that. For me, you have to see the real world to truly be able to have even a respect and a response to it, Because when I was younger, most of my methods of survival were just me reacting to my subjective reality, rather than trying to update my subjective reality to be very closer to objective reality. That means the world needs atheists and theists, because we need that kind of entertainment. Just a second, guys. I'll be back. Okay. Excuse the interruptions. Every day I find that purpose has to be extracted from contemplated existence. You have to understand that you're a being that doesn't have to. You detach from language. That's pretty much it. And you find contentment in your presence. And then in the ruins of the mind, you find the treasures of your soul. You find how your true intelligence moves. And most people, like, the most simplest way is, again, think of a moment before you learned language, who you were, how you were, what the world was. That was like the pure new moment. That was the piece of paper without having anything written on it. Right now, as I'm speaking to you, I'm like, like, since the beginning of my life and how my subjective reality evolved, it evolved through various selves that brought with them various worlds. So pretty much I'm saying your mind is not just a collection of memories and a file cabinet kind of thing. Your mind is a collection of memories of selves, like senses of yourself, which each in that moment had a certain universal view. So you're not just your past senses of self, your all the worlds that those past senses of self see, and the knowing that was extracted. Okay? Pretty much it's like we're in this fog of strict belief where playfulness, honestly, is the route out. For me, blessings were, like, the greatest blessings were ones that were evoking a playfulness in the moment. And playfulness is where the greatest ideas come, I'm telling you, like, a person who's, like, having fun, you ask them a question about, like, the world, and they'll give you a good answer. They'll give you a great answer, So in some sense, you gotta be mindful, and you gotta acknowledge the dimensions, and you gotta see that you give him the blueprint. I say in some sense, you gotta think like a designer. That means if you want to know, like, if back in the day we had people who were like blacksmith, I would perhaps, like, be a designer, but designer that was curious of both subjective and objective design. That means the world for me first didn't have a story, it didn't have a meaning, it didn't have a purpose. It was just designs. I was just watching shape and form and just scenery. It was just sensory perception active, you know. And then in its active engagement with the objective reality that we all share, you got, like, we all have gotten sculpted. The personality I have now, it's like behind my eyes. It's like, what I could tell you. It's like an ocean of all the different things I've seen, you know. And this moment is a drop in that ocean I'm sharing, you know. To abide by your true nature means to just let yourself, let your exploration be done at a natural pace. Find your natural pace. I feel like that's going to enhance, like, the being's life, because that's where my creative force came. It didn't come from like, oh man, I saw some. It came from an abidance by a rhythm, where in that rhythm there was a sort of ultimate trust behind my personality. And that ultimate trust just allowed the world to evolve before the personality could, and so the personality became void. Okay? That means sometimes your world behind your eyes can evolve faster than the world outside of your eyes. And when it evolves, your sense of self goes with that world. It's like the apocalypse, you know? What is apocalypse? It's pretty much an artwork being destroyed, you know? Existential artwork is being destroyed, you know? That's like an apocalypse, I think. The designs of existence crumble. And for me, I've tried to look at emptiness. I've been like, okay, let's see, is this world empty? And I see so much stuff here. And I wonder, could all this stuff still be held in emptiness? And I just think, and I eventually see, what am I doing? I'm trying to put a face to the unknown. And those who put a face into the unknown, unfortunately, it's not unfortunate, perhaps it's necessary, but their spirituality becomes one where they're trying to connect with a higher power rather than realizing the greater potential of their vision. Okay, they're trying to get something still. If you're in a mindset where you're like, God, give me the truth, you know, God's gonna be like, calm down first, man. then I'll give mankind the truth, you know. So I'm telling you, function in the vibe of just giving, and you're going to see a lot of unnecessary resistance throughout the day just fades. You step out of the fog of your own creation. On this philosophy group in Facebook, some guy wrote this question like, what is truth? And I just gave this answer in small caps, like, a moment. When you realize how profound that is, that me and you, regardless of my view and your view, are within a moment. Existence has a momentary present display. The watcher within realizes the one who wants to know the awareness that is aware it is aware it's unreachable. You cannot know. Your ego is based on your awareness, and if there is a deeper aspect within existence that is more aware, your ego fades in that light. And pretty much it's like the way you in some sense see beyond the ego, beyond the idea, yourself as an idea, is that, like, it's the light of a candle in sunlight. It's an integration of the light of your inner reality with outer light, which in some sense means you're willing to confront the presence of your inner and outer reality in one moment. So in other words, you don't want to play in outer reality. You don't want too much, like, play an external game, and at the same time, you don't want to too much play an internal game where you're like just going. So some people can even perceive these talks I give as some sort of internal game, you know. And they in some sense they're kind of like a performance, I consider them. But at the same time, like, I consider them as a performance of a lifetime. Like, I'm like alive once, why not? You know. But what I'm trying to get to is that the ego becomes the transparency of the ego is understood once it, in some sense, integrates with the light of the sun. The candlelight lights integrates. So a temporary light, a light that was acknowledging a temporary reality, begins to acknowledge an eternal reality and begins to see beyond an eternal and a temporal dualistic wheel. You begin to see that you only have karma if the wheel of karma is still in your gaze. You know, when I'm sleeping and I'm like in deep sleep, I don't have any karmic problems. And I don't mean like I don't have karmic problems. I'm not trying to um, reduce the idea of karma in your eyes. Karma is very important to pay attention to because it's a universal quality. You know, it's a intelligent administration of universal force. You know, it can become intelligent, but I'm saying like life is a moment of presence prior to language. I called it empty seeing, you know, empty dash seeing, you know, or seeing emptiness, seeing dash emptiness. And I got this. There was a temple, a temple beside my place, like right now, where I'm giving this talk in my home. There was a temple nearby, and a Vishnu temple, you know. And me and my brother would oftentimes go there and just like meditate or something. One time I went alone, like my brother wasn't, he couldn't, and I just went, and I just sat there watching these icons of gods, these statues of the gods that were there, you know. And whenever I go into a temple, I have no thoughts. I just go based on a sort of intuitive feeling, like this is what should happen, you know. And I remember I go and I sit somewhere and I was looking there, and then suddenly, it's as if I was looking at the statue of a god. That means like the idea of a god was right there in front of me. And I wondered about the creator's creator. And that's where a lot of people, I think there two pathways occur, where either they take the mystical route, they don't lose faith in the unknown, or they lose faith in the unknown and they give into a certain territorial knowledge. So knowledge and intelligence can be said to be different things, you know. Intelligence is how knowledge is being expressed. And how it's being expressed is through a conscious force. That means, like I'm saying, you're your whole moment of being. You know, that's why like life is not something to freak out about too much. Because the design of it will carry on. In some sense, like there was a guy named Rupert Sheldrake, this professor, and this Professor Rupert Sheldrake, he said something. I mean, I think people in the scientific community frown upon him, but he has an incredible wealth of ideas to contribute. Rupert Sheldrake is his name. He has this concept of morphic fields. And in some sense, what it came down to, I felt like this is how I've understood this man's concept. But the concept of visionary, it was like how we see like species rise and civilizations rise and fall throughout history. It's as if like an intelligent planet trying to constantly think a better thought, you know. It's as if we are like, in some sense, the pattern of our existence is an effect of how a greater intelligence is being expressed. And because all of this is in the dark, and our species has not even been able to transcend the language threshold and move beyond the veil of thoughts, you know, like not a lot of people can live in a world of silence because they feel silence is chaos. But sometimes when you look, once you confront the chaos, You get to look from how the chaos sees the order. And when you see that, you kind of realize that chaos is a path of breaking. Anybody who right now in your life you feel you have chaotic elements, guess what? You pay more attention to those chaotic elements. You go to a path of breaking, but this way you do it is like you confronted once honestly your situation and you get an update, you know? And then you, in some sense, regroup throughout the day and you realign your mind through a reformation of the incident, you know, something like that. Anyways, and the kid at the end of Alchemist found, like, you know, pretty much the end of the route was like, you leave home to come back to it. And one can say consciousness extends and then reverts back, you know. And right before I end off, Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, this guru, I'll say, who was a cigarette salesman, believe it or not, he became a guru, enlightened guru in India. And he has this quote where he says, when I see that I am nothing, that is wisdom. When I see that I am everything, that is love. And in between, my life moves. Okay? So I'm saying our subjective realities oscillate between, like, your mind is not thinking like a personality, like a hamster in a wheel. Your mind is seeing complexity and simplicity all the time. It's oscillating between these. Okay? It is oscillating from being everything in the moment and being nothing. Being everything, being nothing. You know? Imagine every time we blink, it's like, you know, system update, system update. It's like shut down, restart the computer, you know, like it's one of those things, okay? But it's so instantaneous and minute, we don't realize its influence on our subjectivity, you know? This is why to close your eyes in a world filled with shape is to actually try to see the value of that shape without seeing the shape, okay? And wherever your attention goes, your life updates in that direction. That's pretty much it, right? So I'll tell you something hilarious. You know, I'll say this before I actually end off. You guys should go check online Sam Harris speaking to Joe Rogan, something about like enlightened gurus. And Sam Harris is like this notable atheist and in a strange way spiritualist, but at the same time, you know, he's focused on bringing awareness to AI. Like, he's a very respectable man, a very great speaker. Like, I admire his performance, but like, and his contribution to culture, you know. But at the same time, you know, he was telling Joe Rogan, who's this incredible podcaster, you know, about like how there was this guy like how these enlightened gurus, like there was a situation where a bunch of guys, like grown men, like who had day jobs, they came to this enlightened guru, and this enlightened guru who had never left like India, you know, they all came there, and eventually it was strange because the enlightened guru was like sleeping with the wives of these guys, but they thought this dude was so divine, like it was so messed up, it was scary in some way when I heard this, you know. But it, like, the guy, like, you know, and so the guy was doing all that. Like, the enlightened guru was sleeping with the wives of all these people following him, okay? And then the guy comes to America, right? And the gurus and all the people are still following him. And then the guy is taken to a grocery store where he finds Haagen-Dazs ice cream, okay? He finds Haagen-Dazs ice cream, he takes, like, eats the Haagen-Dazs ice cream, and his mind gets blown. And every day this guy goes and eats Haagen-Dazs ice cream. He tells the gurus to drive, the like, disciples, you know, his blind disciples to go, like, what do you call it? Like, drive him so he eats Haagen-Dazs. And then that's when, like, one of the guys, you know, says, yo, man, this guy's a con. And so Sam Harris and Joe Rogan were laughing so much because this guy, this blindness hadn't realized the guru slept with the guy's wife. You know, he didn't think like, okay, maybe this guy's a con. But at the Haagen-Dazs was the, you know, game changer. You know, so oh man. Anyways, so thanks for listening, guys. I if there's any questions, if any ideas you guys want to bring up, if there's anybody listening, you know, you can definitely share now. It could be anything. You know? This is like part of the audience engagement of the channel. You know? Here, I'll ask a question, and maybe this is easier if you guys could give an answer. What do you feel society needs? But based on your reality, what do you feel society needs? It could be anything, you guys. You could say anything. Like I want to see like how your universe like. Okay, nice. Mr. Within, where it is, asleep and awake. Okay, so like, what do you mean? Nice, 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 nice. What is the last word, Mohana, and Cosmos of Compassion? I'm not sure what you're referring to. Are you speaking about the concept of Mr. Within? Why do you think a world without like money and bombs? You could say like that's part of technology, right? So please explain. Okay, I'm getting a bit confused. Can you say again what you want me to explain? A world without money or bombs? Like how I see that idea? Hmm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. See, this whole waking up thing is I agree. It's so important. But Alan Watts kind of like said something like imagine like going to sleep and never wake up, and then imagine being awake and never having slept. You know, money is magic and slavery. Right, but why is the magic and slavery here? Why is this illusion or this conspiracy here? I mean, bombs, of course, yeah, they're like ridiculous use of matter. But imagine the concept of a bomb was something like where it was an impact that did the opposite effect of a bomb, you know? And Mohana, I'm still not sure what concept you're referring to. Yeah, the thing is, like, okay, here, I'll get into this. A world without money or bombs is. See, I don't like, we're like, think of as if me, right now we're talking. It's not because of fear, it's because of greed. War and enslavement is because of greed. It's because of one entity looking at other entities and being like, okay, I can move their will. You know, that's the thing. And I totally understand how money is like this system, but it's as if like if we don't have money, if we would be more savage as a species. You know, there would be more theft. Okay, there would be we're too many people on a planet not to try to organize ourselves with certain systems, right? And yeah, and you know exactly because fear is kind of inspires greed. Yeah, definitely. Fear inspires greed. The dude's scared, so he has to take and try to live on longer. Right, but love in a changing world, if it has to have a structure, let me tell you why love can't. Love will just chaos will hit love, and love will just take it. That's the issue. Love is embracive. It embraces. Okay, love accepts. But chaos is like it's trying to break. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Guys, I'm just reading your comments. Um, okay. So, Moana, I'm going to respond to you because I was talking about that before. What if we had love? There's more than enough. Like, honestly, the thing is, like, I love is important. Okay, it is necessary for our biological survival, as like in our, especially in our tribalism. Like, we need it. We need that. We need to be able to. What you love, you tend to live for. If you notice, you see all these couples and dramas, like, the person who loves the other person is like they're also chained to the outcome of their lover's reality. You know, and so the thing is, listen, love is important. Devotion in yoga is a path to truth. I'm not making that up. It's called bhakti yoga. It's out of your devotion for the existence of the moment you realize the true nature of the moment. You know, karma yoga is like through the expression of from the effect you are trying to see the cause. You might have to, Mohana, you might have to rewrite the last part of your sentence. Um, but cosmos of compassion, you know, I'll tell you this. Yeah, thanks for seeing it. Pretty much what I'm seeing is like it's an advanced system. The more social and individual it is, think of it this way: in society has many different people, and decisions are being made, and thoughts are being moved around in offices. That it's like the gears of our society. Okay, now it's different individuals who are running this collective phenomena. Okay, this collective machine. Okay, right now the global communities we create become like the mind of this machine. Okay, but for me it's like this is where Jordan Peterson kind of stands. If you guys know who Jordan Peterson is, he says like the individual, because the collective could be blind socially speaking. For me it's like we can't accept everybody to accept being in one way, and we can't also accept like every way being allowed. Do you see? It's like just like how we have to build houses, to protect ourselves, or if we had a civilization on Mars, we need that glass like layering, which is very inefficient, but like in order to preserve the atmosphere, it's like we I don't know how to say it's too advanced. That's what I'm saying. It's too complex to have one approach suffice. But what seems to work is the most, rather than all these people being told what to do, through their own clarity of seeing their world, being inspired to do what to do. I think that's the change. But I don't know. I don't know. So yeah, guys, I might have gone a little bit off track, but for me it's like love is definitely important. Love, without love, like the personality won't feel free, you know. That's why I love the shower. And I sing in the shower, Oh, J curve in business, that's a business concept you're saying. Okay, forming, storming, norming, and performing. Forming, storming, norming, and performing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's yeah. Paradigm shift. Yeah, I totally. I see what you're saying now. Yeah. Um. Yeah, I see what you're saying. You know, it's yeah. Death is occurrence, which is a transition. I kind of see like life as a sort of like I woke up to life rather than I was born in life. I see I woke up to it, and eventually, the personality will sleep. The bewildered mind will rest. Do you guys like honestly feel like our civilization should have by now had like communities that, like, I feel the tree of knowledge as if they're not letting us climb past the point. And the reason is because the business sector is like it's hired the educational system. It's made the educational system its employees. Businesses are bigger entities. I think they can even intimidate the educational system to change. But for me, um, yeah, yeah. Guys, when I give these talks, you understand it's like the speed of thoughts that move through my attention, they've built momentum. That's the kind of power of like performance. I think of like that guitar player, you know. Money is God. Uh, you mean like how God is like a gaze through matter regardless? Is that how you mean? Do you mean money is God? Yeah. I mean, but what is God? You know? No, I understand. I heard this concept before. Like I had a friend, his name, like I'm not in touch with the man anymore, but like his name was Gabriel, and he told me he was like a conspiracy theorist in our group. Like we would hang out. And he would say money is God. He said the I in like the bill is like the Illuminati God. You know, and what that means is that means all of society is being ruled by one gaze. You know, like something like that. But I was like, I'm not like that's not that's like it's like why look at the shade, when you could look at like a brighter day, and in some sense there could be certain systems embedded in culture that don't even allow the consciousness of the being to move past the point. You know, that's why a lot of sages and yogis live by in the mountainsides, by the mountain. I mean, yeah, I mean, of course, it's like I've had moments where money was like God because it was the thing I had to like in some sense make, you know. Wow, that's such a nice concept, Mohana. Can you just say a bit more about the saturated itself? How are you saying that concept? Okay, I see what you mean. It's the contained cell. Okay. Okay, nice. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, there is it's this stimulation. It even worse. I totally understand because it chains you to a certain habit. But at the same time, I stopped making my challenges overwhelming for myself unnecessarily. You know, like that was one thing too. So I understand it's a problem, but I consider it an inferior problem. The superior problem is like the line how your intelligence is organizing itself, and to truly like, you know what I mean? It's yeah. I don't think it's slavery. It's just you gotta behave in the house of that system in that way to attain something. You know what I mean? Society is like a certain theater performance where you gotta go into be a certain like perform in a certain part of it and attain something. You know? Now, you know what I mean? And so many people say like, you know, do what makes you, you know, like the something you have the most fun with. Go towards your interest, what you're naturally drawn in life. You know, go towards that, follow it. You know, I followed that, and some, you know, like it's not what I expected, but it's like the result of it was these talks. You know, I followed some unknown inspiration in my moment. You know, and this unknown inspiration was a sort of not a promise of a better self. You know, because I was preferenceless. When you become preferenceless, the divine laughs in front of you. And what I mean by that is that in some sense you're not trying to make every experience into a thought. Okay? And the problem with money is I could say money is actually an object. It's a sort of mental slavery. It's a system enforced to where we have to respond to because it's the game everybody's playing. Like if we want to live in a world without money, easy, just go into nature and just live that kind of life, you know? But if you are living in this world, there's a reason human beings are drawn to technology. You know, this is why like I'm not one of those people where I'm telling people go live in nature, guys, kumbaya, you know. Something like that. It's like nice. Yeah, when I say become preferenceless, the way I'm saying it is like just in your effort to become preferenceless, you discover the edges of the effortless and where your effort arises from, and you in some sense have this like peaceful Taoistic awareness of the moment. You know. See, right. I agree. You don't want to play it. Like I've looked at society, and at some point I'm like, why should I go into like that fucked up machine? But I was because some the problem with society is the consequences are more solid and more immediate if you don't abide by the rules, right? I don't see it. It's as much of a mental slavery as if you've gone in a dark room and you don't step out of it. You don't have to like when I come home. I'm not living in a world where I'm like, oh my god, such chaos and slavery. You know, it's like okay, that's it's the system is too big for like one individual part of it to change. But the greatest contribution that individual part can do is to at least live its life. I mean, like I'll tell you honest, right? I had this profound revelation, right, a couple days ago. It was so profound where it destroyed the concept of finding a purpose in life. Okay, I might have touched upon it in the talk, but it destroyed the idea because I'm like, wait a minute. It's like we have this evolutionary biological opportunity as if a part of nature that's more advanced compared to when you look at other animals and entities, like our sophistication of conceptualization is on a whole nother level, you know? To a point where we look at our animals and we attribute human personalities. It's like, look at how much my dog loves me. And the dog's just a moment of nature happening, you know? But what I'm trying to say is like, don't 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 live in a world where where you the images of a lesser self are dictating the outcome. Okay, that's the best thing I could tell you. It's kind of like you gotta be careful. First thing is you gotta there was this Sufi mystic poet named Hafez. He said one of the most what I consider the most badass quotes in wisdom. Like I was like slow hand clapping for this quote in my mind, right? And his quote was, "The words you speak become the house you live in." Right? So the first thing is, if you're someone who wants to like, you know, like are interested in self-awareness and self-inquiry, you gotta like watch your words. You gotta be mindful of what you say. You gotta be mindful of how you shut the door. You don't just bang it and walk in. You know, because it's like one is the conscious moment is empowered through the framework of an animalistic instinct. The other moment it's being administered by a conscious gaze. a moment that doesn't have to have turbulence, pilots through time and space by realizing the momentary generation of them. Right? So I'm telling you, to that friend, which I eventually don't think he listened. He didn't hear me. My conspiracy theorist friend, I told him, don't live a life where there's always an enemy behind the door you can't see. Have your attention on what works. You know? That's one of those things, like, if you guys probably know who Sadhguru is. But one thing I heard from him is, like, it's not like you gotta just do the thing that is just good or feels good. You also have to do what works, which means sometimes you must allow your subjective realm to evolve first through you observing how the objective realm moves. The world is an open book, and we're reading it all the time, and that's how the moment is in some sense personalized. I'll tell you guys, you know. Yeah, chop wood and carry water. Yeah. Yeah. I love the LOL, you know. Yeah, I mean, you know, that's my poetic softness. What can I say? You know, I'm a poetically gentle man. You know, guys, can I honestly just interest you guys in just maybe get your opinion on this concept I have? Okay, for me, I think creativity again is like a personal exploration. Okay, but go buy printer paper, okay? And there's a reason I say printer paper, right? It's not like I'm trying to increase the sales of printer paper. I'm telling you, like, go buy a printer paper, get a pen, and put that all that paper with the pen on a table that you pass a couple times throughout the day, okay? And whenever you get an idea that you feel is worth remembering, where there is some design to it or some view, write that down. The process of writing updates your intelligence in a unique way because it's an alignment of your objective body with a creative force. Do you understand? Like, we're creatures that work with vision, and this vision is external and internal. I say internal not as if, like, again, within, like, not physically within, but like, you know, that also includes, like, just, I'm not saying reality is just neurons, you know. I'm saying that you gotta, that's, the more you write on those pieces of paper, the more you're valuing your mind. Because it's showing you something, you're like, okay, it showed me something, let me just like extract out of the unknown abyss of imagination, you know, like, into words and language this view, you know? So for me, these talks are honestly like, I'm seeing something in my subjective reality which I'm putting shape to, you know? So I feel you guys can, every person should do that, you know? The art of writing should not be lost, you know? Like, or like, why else did we evolve with fingers, you know? Not just to type and stuff, you're not just to, like, you know, writing, like, it has an elegance, it has a culture, you know, it evokes certain evolutionary dormant aspects of, I think, like, your mind, like, it's like a certain behavior that's embedded in your evolution, you know, which you're not behaving in that manner, suddenly you behave, it's like it suddenly pours out of you, you know. The stories that you're told as a child more were like the first walls of your world, you know. Because it's scientifically, if me and you, if all three of us were like, okay, let's be scientists for a moment, we would consider reality as a room. And then we're trying to figure out what's in this room, right? So existence is a sort of room, but now I'm saying there's also the existence of the subtle, right? And there's a multidimensionality at work. And there could be elusive infinities, and there could be true infinities. But those true infinities, I find none exist. The closest as a kid, I was like, I felt like this was a genius thing I did as a kid. I studied infinity, where in a way where like I was like this 11-year-old kid, you know, like my closet, its doors would open from the inside, and it had it's like the doors of the closet were mirrors. So I would have these mirrors, and it was like this like kind of wall, like it was a big closet, okay, and like. When the mirrors would open and the mirrors would face one another, I would go there and put my hand, and I would see like the infinite reflections, like the optical illusion of like that infinite, like you know, uh, that optical illusion. Okay, I would see an empty infinity. I would see a self-created, optically, you know, elusive infinity. Okay, so I'm saying you can have that subjectively too. It's all about the aware, like this is the last thing I'm going to tell you. The greatest thing you can ask yourself is like in any moment, it works in any moment, is what decision can I make that makes me happy? Trust me, guys, this might sound corny, but just think about it. You in a moment are like, okay, I could do so many actions, but what brings happiness, but is also efficient for survival? I think a way of defining success nowadays could be like efficient, happy survival. I mean, what? Oh man. But honestly, guys, thanks for listening, and learn from yourself more than you learn from anybody else. Remember that. You know, nobody has your eyes. That's why you're your own teacher, and you teach yourself through exploration and self-inquiry. You know? No problem, guys. You know, pretty much for me, it's like it's a playful, universal responsibility as an existential entity to just communicate what I feel is. You know, it's like you can't tell a tree what kind of fruit to give you. So thanks, guys, for tuning in. You know, blessings, and one thing I'll tell you, this is kind of cool. I never like I considered myself a writer. Thanks, guys. I considered myself a writer when I wrote the first statement that I felt was from my original world, something that only I saw that I didn't. And if you when I wrote that statement, it was like I don't want to live in a world that looks the same the next day. That was like my resolution, you know. So like embrace the spirit of novelty, and it'll reveal secrets in your authentic attention, you know. And don't be afraid of life. Also, let me tell you, because it's all passing by. It's all passing by. It's all going on. Okay. Take care, guys. So, yeah. Thanks for tuning.